From the Center for Music Learning, I'm Dr. Micah Killian, here with some thoughts on practice. One of the most common questions that I get from students is how to increase their motivation to practice. Many of them know they should practice more and more effectively, but they struggle to get into the practice room to do the work. In fact, Dr. Bob Duke and I just gathered some preliminary data where we asked musicians of all ability levels how motivated they are before a typical practice session, and only 16% of respondents said they were very motivated. Now, it's not as if being unmotivated to practice makes you a bad musician or a bad student. If you find yourself unmotivated to do something, it's just a sign that the activity hasn't been sufficiently rewarding. Now, the good news is, if you'd like to increase your motivation, there are some things you can do to make practice a more rewarding activity. To help frame this, think about the things in your life that you're intrinsically motivated to do. For instance, if you suddenly found out that all of your responsibilities tomorrow were canceled, how would you actually spend your time? Some of you may do what I would do, which is use at least some of that time to catch up on stuff that already needs doing. But you would probably spend at least a portion of your day doing things that don't appear to have any immediate external reward. What is it about those tasks that makes you want to do them? Well, this line of thinking led researchers Ryan and DC to try and identify some of the commonalities among the activities that people find themselves intrinsically motivated to do. As it turns out, people tend to be motivated by tasks that they can perform with autonomy and competence, and those that afford them relatedness. And finding ways to increase these three features of a task can, over time and experiences, foster meaningful change and motivation. First up is autonomy, which is just the independence or the freedom to do what you choose. To increase autonomy, embrace choice in your practice. And there are lots of creative ways to recognize and practice freedom in your music making. But the most intuitive way for many of us may simply be to choose what to practice. Now, I know it can seem to a lot of musicians that you don't really get to choose what to practice. Right? Like, professionals have to learn music for their careers, and students typically have to learn stuff that's being assigned to them by their teachers or their directors. But as much as you're able to, choose music you enjoy to address the technical and expressive obstacles you have in your playing. This will do two happy things. First, if you're playing music that you enjoy, you're going to be more motivated to practice it. And second, over time, you can align your expressive and technical capacity with the kind of music that you want to play, making you uniquely skilled at performing precisely the music that you enjoy. And this leads to individuality, which is going to be a huge asset in a long-term musical life. Next up, relatedness. Now, practice can seem like an inherently isolating activity, right? It typically happens alone in a room. But there are a few ways that you can use practice to connect with others. First, pretty simply, practice with other musicians. If you haven't really thought about this before, here's a book I strongly suggest by the incredible Wiff. It's a trumpet book, but what he's really doing in this book is exploring different ways for musicians to collaborate while developing skills. It's a great book. Highly recommend. Next, I got a slightly radical idea that I'm going to expand on in a future video, but share your practice with others and observe the practice of experts. Collect and share more evidence that all musicians at every ability level are essentially doing one incredible unifying thing in the practice room. We're all trying to make more music the way we think music should sound. Embrace that shared mission and connect with others. And finally, competence. Over the past few years, I have watched a lot of practice from musicians of different ability levels. And I feel pretty strongly that for most musicians, the most reliable way to increase motivation is to practice more effectively. Practicers at every ability level that want to feel more competent about their practice can do the same two things. First, set clear, observable, and reasonable goals for the practice time you have. Then reach those goals, making noticeable change happen every time you practice. Reaching rewarding goals is one of the most motivating habits that any of us can develop. Working towards then achieving a goal makes it more likely that you'll be interested in putting in the work next time. This pattern of identify an important and achievable target and then get that thing great is an integral feature of skill development in general, but it's also an effective way to foster feelings of competence, which can lead to an increase in intrinsic motivation. To quote Dr. Bob Duke, there's nothing more reinforcing than the recognition of one's own accomplishments. In short, better practicers are more motivated to practice. So become a better practicer.